Hello friends, welcome back. Myself Pushpendra Singh and we are going to start with our daily current affairs. So today you have 18th of May 2021 and these lectures are basically useful for those who are preparing for the civil services examination which is conducted by the UPSC, and for that purpose you should be studying the national newspapers for your daily current affairs coverage, right? And we are also following the national newspapers like the Hindu or Indian Express. For that purpose you can subscribe our channel on the YouTube, that is Future IAS, where you can supplement your preparation with the help of these video lectures which are entirely based on the daily current affairs. Alright, so let's begin with the lecture. Okay, so first news is about Indian language learning app. Now, government of India is pushing for, right, some sort of innovation challenge for creating a Indian language learning app. As you know that there are a lot of languages, right? Eighth schedule of the Constitution also recognize more than 22 languages, right, which has to be promoted. Now, for the purpose of creating the Indian language learning app, right, an innovation challenge is being proposed, right, with the help of the government of India by using the My Government as a citizen engagement platform, right? It is basically the innovation challenge is moved with the help of or with the partnership of the Department of Higher Education. The main purpose of this innovation challenge is to create the learning app for Indian languages for different, the speakers which speak in their own languages, right? So objective of this innovation challenge is to create a app, is to develop a app, right, that can promote the regional language literacy, because as you know that the regional languages play a greater role in terms of the overall development of that region, right? So we need to promote those regional languages, the literacy, and thereby creating the cultural understanding within the country, because India is a multicultural country, and to promote the cultures equally, right, or to safeguard those cultures which are at the verge of extinction. Sometimes what happens is this cultural overlap or cultural extinction may also be taken place, right, which is also causing resentment or some anger among certain people, right, with respect to those particular culture. So in order to promote a unique culture, right, as India is a multicultural society, is also one of the important responsibility vested with the government of India, and for that purpose Indian language learning app is being proposed. Okay, regarding My Government is basically, as I told you, that it is a citizen engagement portal of the government of India, right? So it is founded by the government of India to promote the active participation of Indian citizens in their country's governance, right? So to take the active participation from the citizens of this country, specifically in the governance and the development perspective. The ultimate aim of this citizen engagement platform called My Government is to create a common platform for all Indian citizens to crowdsource the governance ideas from the citizens, right? So that ideas would definitely boost the transparency in the governing structure. Okay, so this innovation challenge would basically open to all Indian individuals. It also include the startups and the companies for the purpose of the developing of the app, right? And this innovation challenge basically closes on 27th of May 2021, and based on based on that the particular amount of inputs that is basically received from the different quarters, like say from individual startups and companies, right, certain evaluations will be done based on those submissions of those prototypes regarding the development of that literary app, right, or the development of that Indian language learning app. And those prototypes will be evaluated, and in that process the top 10 teams will be invited to make the presentation, right? And among these top 10 teams, ultimately the three teams will be selected, right? And these three teams would receive the funding. The funding will be given to those three teams to make this, the Indian language learning app better, to make a user friendly, to ultimate propose some sort of a some sort of a creating the greater cultural understanding, to promote the regional language literacy in the country. So ultimately these top three selected participants will be given the Indian national rupees 20 lakhs rupees to the first one, 10 lakhs rupees to the second one, and 5 lakhs rupees to the third one, right, in order to make this app better, in order to promote the regional language literacy much better, and ultimately to have the greater sense of cultural understanding of our country. Okay, so this is basically the innovation challenge, which is Indian language learning app innovation challenge, which is being proposed by the MyGov, right, with the help of the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, with the Department of Higher Education, to ultimately to create an Indian language learning app. Okay, next is the plasma therapy. Okay, as you know that plasma therapy is basically having the greater applications, specifically for the treatment of those patients which are which are infected because of some sort of a chronic disease, say the viral disease, right? So the plasma convalescent therapy, or simple the convalescent plasma therapy, is being used for the treatment of those patients which are infected because of the novel coronavirus or coronavirus, right? So here the advisory from Indian Council of Medical Research have said that that the treatment guidelines, right, with respect to the uses of this plasma therapy, right? So for that purpose, the use of this plasma therapy have been now dropped, right, from the recommended treatment guidelines, because the scientists have not concluded, right, any utility or any greater amount of utility for the use of this plasma therapy for the purpose of the treatment of COVID patients. Okay, now this trial was basically conducted by the Indian Council of Medical Research on 400 patients last year, right? And these trials were basically known as the PLACID trial. And after the trial, the Indian Council of Medical Research have found that there was no significant benefit, right, of the uses of this plasma therapy, and even they found that this has caused even the mutations in the virus also, right? So but despite of that one, right, the plasma therapy was there as a recommended guideline, but now the Indian Council of Medical Research has now dropped from the recommended treatment guidelines of using this plasma therapy for the treatment of these COVID patients. Okay, some experts or some doctors also in the view that these plasma therapy may even played a role in facilitating these mutations in the virus also, because now you are using the plasma, right, from the patients which are recovered from the COVID, and ultimately you are giving those plasma to to those patients who are still infected with the novel coronavirus. Okay, so so what is this Indian Council of Medical Research? I told you many times that Indian Council of Medical Research is basically an apex body, right, for the purpose of the coordination, promotion of the biomedical research in our country, right? And it is one of the oldest and largest medical research bodies in the world also. Okay, so a brief understanding about this convalescent plasma. See, the convalescent plasma therapy is basically a way of artificially inducting the passive immunity, right, in the patient, by transferring the blood plasma, right, from the patients who have had the disease, right, to basically your the naive patients, or the patients which are basically infected with the novel coronavirus. So this can be granting the recipient immunity towards the disease, because the antibodies that are present in the blood plasma of the person which are already recovered, right? So this convalescent plasma therapy is one of the proposed treatment for the COVID-19 throughout the world. Now the recent study have been debating the use of this convalescent plasma therapy for the treatment of this the COVID patients. So the basic idea behind this plasma therapy is that the people who have had this illness and they are recovered from this COVID-19 infections, now they have got antibodies to that. Okay, and now they are immune for that purpose. See, this convalescent plasma is the blood, right, that basically recovered from the patients, and in that therapy this blood or this plasma blood basically would be transferred intravenously to the people, right, who do not have these antibodies, right, to the disease, and therefore the person who are infected, they can get the immunity or passive immunity from that particular plasma blood. Okay, so regarding this plasma therapy, I've already informed you. The plasma, basically, or blood plasma, is basically a yellowish liquid, right? I'll show you the picture, the last of this news. So it is a yellowish liquid component of the blood, right, that is basically produced after centrifugation. Okay, and that basically holds the blood cells, right, of the whole blood in the suspension. Okay, so it is a liquid part of the blood, obviously, right, which carries the cells, proteins throughout the body. And this plasma, basically, in terms of the total volume of the blood, the plasma basically consisting of around 50% of the body's total blood volume. 50% in terms of the volume of the blood is basically your plasma. Okay, now this plasma basically contains the viral antibodies, specifically for those persons which are recovered from the COVID infections, and that can be used as a treatment, right, for those cases, right, or those persons who have this COVID-19 virus. So this plasma therapy is a medical procedure which are basically used, basically this plasma of a recovered patients, to create antibody specifically to those persons who are infected with the COVID-19 virus. So in the medically term, you can say that it is basically the treatment which uses the antibodies which are found in specifically the blood, which have been taken from the recovered patients, and now this plasma have been intravenously been injected into the person which are still infected with the virus. Okay, so definitely that type of basically plasma therapy can be useful specifically to treat those persons who are basically infected with the COVID-19. So now you have this whole blood. This whole blood is taken from the patients or the persons, right, who are recovered, who are recovered from the COVID-19. Okay, who got infected at that point of the time, now they have recovered. So this centrifugation process that ultimately led to the three layers. Now these three layers are clearly visible over there. You could easily see, first is plasma. I have told you that is the yellowish part, that consisting of the 55% of the total blood volume. Okay, the second one is basically your leukocytes and the platelets, that consisting of around less than 1% of the total blood in terms of volume. So that forms basically a buffy coat in terms of these leukocytes and platelets. And the third is basically consisting of your erythrocytes. This erythrocytes consisting of 45% of the total blood in terms of volume. So these are the three components that is basically received after centrifugation of the blood of the patient who are recovered from the COVID-19. Now let us understand one by one. So plasma, I have given you the brief introduction about the plasma. Now let us understand about the leukocytes. What is leukocytes? See, you have in your blood, you have the white blood cells. These white blood cells are also known as leukocytes. So leukocytes are nothing but the white blood cells. Okay, and these are the cells of the immune system that are involved in protecting the body against both infectious disease as well as the foreign invaders. Okay, so all white cells, or all of these white blood cells are produced and derived from the multipotent cells in the bone marrow specifically. Okay, and which are known also as the hematopoietic stem cells. And what about these platelets? These platelets are made up of, and these platelets are also made in the bone marrow, along with your the white blood cells and your red blood cells. Okay, your bone marrow is basically, is a spongy center inside your bones, right? What is bone marrow? That is a spongy center that is being found out inside your bones. And another name for that purpose for the platelet is basically your thrombocytes. So the various healthcare providers which basically call a clot in the thrombus, so once these platelets are made, they are circulated into your bloodstream, and they live for 8 to 10 days. So what you can say, that these platelets basically looks like a tiny plate. And these platelets are basically the tiny blood cells that help your body from the clots to stop bleeding. Specifically, if one of your blood vessels got damaged. Okay, so it sends out some sort of a signals to the platelets, and platelets then rush to the site of the damage and form a plug or the clot to fix the damage in your body. Okay, and regarding the last one, that is erythrocytes. What is this erythrocytes? Erythrocytes are also known as RBC, just like a leukocytes which are known as WBC or white blood cells. The erythrocytes are known as RBC or red blood cells. They are basically also known as enucleate cells, right, which are filled with the hemoglobin, and that basically transport the oxygen, carbon dioxide between lungs and the tissues. Okay, so they are produced in the red bone marrow by the process called erythropoiesis. Okay, and during that process, the stem cells which are derived from the erythropoiesis procedure, which undergoes series of the morphological changes to become a mature erythropoiesis, right, and that ultimately form your erythrocytes. That is basically your red blood cells. Okay. Next, your gold exchange. So, the Security and Exchange Board of India basically have floated and consulted consultation paper. That consultation paper would basically related to the gold exchange in India. Okay, so that is the framework that is being proposed by the Security and Exchange Board of India related to the gold exchange in our country. So here the proposal was announced by the Finance Minister Miss Nirmala Sitharaman in the budget speech for the financial year 2021-22. And following this budget proposal or the budget speech that was made by Nirmala Sitharaman, the Security and Exchange Board of India have floated this consultation paper. Okay, and as you know that the SEBI is basically interested with the task of regulating this exchange, right, whether it is a gold exchange, right, and it is basically also involved the vaulting. This is the terms I'll explain, don't worry. The vaulting, assaying, and the gold quality and the delivery standards, right, what we are talking in terms of your gold exchange, right, and this may be basically done in terms of your electronic gold receipts through a separate segment in that process. So that is how this SEBI basically proposed this consultation paper for the purpose of this vaulting, assaying, and the gold quality and delivery standard for that purpose. Okay, so what is this vaulting? What is this vault? And what is this vaulting? See, vaulting gold basically is a term that denotes the gold bullion or which is stored in the professional bank vault. Okay, so by acquiring the vaulted gold, the institutionals or private investors basically obtain the ownership or outright ownership of this physical gold. And what is this assaying? The assaying is the second term. Assaying means it's a technical term that is basically used for the quantitative chemical analysis of the precious metal. Now here we are talking about the gold, so you can say that it's a quantitative chemical analysis of the gold, right? So what is that quantitative chemical analysis? In the context of the gold jewelry, you can say that the assaying means the determination of the gold in the jewelry, right, in which the jewelry is basically taken. Okay, that is something you must understand. And the last is, what is security? What is Securities and Exchange Board of India? The Security and Exchange Board of India is basically a regulatory body for our commodity market, for our security market, and that comes under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Finance. Okay, Government of India ultimately, and that was given the statutory power under the SEBI Act 1992. All right. So here the market regulator or the SEBI has also suggested a new exchange. Okay, that is basically used for for the purpose of your electronic gold receipt, that is EGR, that would be having some sort of advantage over the better liquidity and the single price references, right? So here, as far as the transactions are concerned, the different working groups, the SEBI has also suggested this entire transaction would be divided into the three trackers for the purpose of simplicity. And it is then proposed that vault manager, vaulting, I told you that vaulting is the process by which you have the stored in physical bank vault. So for that purpose, a vault manager, right, should have the net worth of around 50 crore rupees, right, and will be required to furnish this security deposit for that purpose. Okay, next, the next news is about the diplomatic immunity. As you know that the diplomats or the foreign ambassadors are having the immunity, right, that is called the diplomatic immunity from the criminal charges. So what happens is, the wife of the Belgium ambassador, hit the two staff members as at the Baltic in the Seoul, that is the capital of the South Korea. So that hitting of these two staff member by the wife of a Belgium ambassador has basically sparked a controversy between the South Korea and the Belgium. And according to the South Korea's laws, this invite a criminal charges or the criminal investigations. Now, here the Belgium ambassador is basically exercising, the diplomatic immunity to avoid these criminal charges against his wife, because his wife had illegally hit the two staff members at the bottom, right? So here the diplomatic immunity is a privilege, that is some sort of exemption from certain laws or the criminal laws, right, to the diplomats by the country in which they are basically posted. So here the custom is that such diplomats, should function without fear, without threat, or without intimidation. So that is basically, wherever you are working, they should not be in the fear, they should not be in any sort of a pressure, right? For that purpose, this type of laws have been made, or this type of diplomatic immunity has been granted to them. Now, for that purpose, there are two conventions which are which are basically used for the purpose of the diplomatic immunity. The first is called the Vienna Convention. That Vienna Convention is also known as the Convention on the Diplomatic Relations 1961. The second is Convention on the Consular Relations 1963. These are basically the two conventions which are basically providing the diplomatic immunity to those the diplomats which are working in some countries. So what is that Vienna Convention? See, Vienna Convention on the Diplomatic Relations in 1961 is an international treaty that defines the framework for diplomatic relations between the independent countries. Okay, and what is this Vienna Convention on the Consular Relations? It is also international treaty that defines the framework of the consular relations between the sovereign states. So this convention on the consular relations was adopted in 1963, and that was in the force since 1967. And this treaty is basically ratified by more than 180 countries, or specifically by 187 countries, including the South Korea. Now, the South Korea in which the Belgium ambassador is posted, now they are coming under the legal, scrutiny or legal framework, right? They have to use this, this framework in order to avoid some sort of a criminal charges slapped on the diplomat which are placed in the South Korea from the Belgium. Okay, so here you could see the Belgium map. So it is a political map of the Belgium. Okay, so Belgium is a country in the Western Europe, and it is basically known for the medieval towns, and it is also, the headquarters of the European Union as well as the NATO. Okay, so the country having the distinctive regions, right? If you see the distinctive regions in terms of the multicultural, right? For example, in the north of the Belgium, you have the Dutch speaking people, right? And to the south of the Belgium, you will be finding the French speaking people. Okay, and to the east of the Belgium, you would find the German speaking people. So you could see that the German speaking people could be found in the east of Belgium. Okay, the south you would find the French speaking people, and to the north you would find the Dutch speaking people. So it's almost mixed of the different cultures which are residing in the Belgium over there. Okay, so next is basically world oldest cave art and the climate change. So here what is happening is that, as you know, that because of the climatic changes, lot of effect or lot of negative effect is basically impacting almost every segment of the world. Here either the environmental degradation, ecosystem degradation, okay, the extinction of the floral and the faunal compositions, right? The negative effect on the humans also, right? So all such degradations are openly going on, and one such degradations is also on the world human heritage sites also, right? So here the scientists have warned that this environmental degradation is basically affecting some of the humans heritage also. So researchers basically recently reported that the Pleistocene era rock painting, right, that is dating around 45,000 years ago to 20,000 years ago, that is basically located in the caves in the Sulawesi island of the Indonesia, right? These paintings or these rock cut paintings are basically under weathering. What is weathering? Weathering is basically the in situ disintegration of the rocks. In situ disintegration, okay, of rocks. What is in situ disintegration? That is, in situ means at the same place. Disintegration means just breaking down because of the agents of the weathering, right? That is weathering. So because of the climatic changing, this weathering is occurring at the rock cut paintings in the Sulawesi island of the Indonesia. Okay, so here the scientists basically examined the 11 caves and the rock shelters in the Maros Pekop region of the Sulawesi in the Indonesia. Okay, so what is this Pleistocene era? The Pleistocene era or Pleistocene epoch is typically, at the time period that is basically starting from around 2.6 million years ago to 11,700 years ago. So that is the time period that we call the Pleistocene epoch. Okay, and the most recent ice age occurred in that period, where you would find the glaciers cover the huge parts of the planet Earth at that point of the time. And this Pleistocene epoch had followed, the current stage that is called Holocene epoch, right? And regarding the Indonesia, as I told you, that Indonesia is basically also known as the Republic of Indonesia. It is the country in the Southeast Asia and Oceania, that is specifically between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. And it consisting of over 17,000 islands. 17,000 islands, yes. And the major islands basically lying in the Indonesia is Sumatra, Java, Sulawesi, right, as well as the Borneo and the New Guinea also. Now we are talking in terms of the Sulawesi, which is the major island in the Indonesia. Okay, this artwork in the areas include, the world oldest hand stencil that is almost 40 years ago, or dated around 40 year old, that is being created by pressing the hand on the cave wall. So this hand stencil have been deteriorated because of this climatic changes, right? And this hand stencil is basically created by pressing the hand on the wall cave and further spraying the wet red mulberry pigments over it to give the coloration in that process. So what is this hand stencil? The hand stencil is formed by placing the hand against the wall, covering the surrounding area in the pigment, right, resulting in, some sort of a characteristic image of roughly the round area of the solid pigment, right, with some sort of a the hand in that center, and that may be decorated with a dog dash or patterns. Right here the red mulberry pigments basically used. So here the cave features is basically one of the world oldest depiction of the animals, right? The pig or the watery pig is basically painted on the wall, and that basically is around 45,500 year old. So this cave art of the Sulawesi island is basically much older than the prehistoric cave art of the Europe. So that is also, you have the heritage, implications for that purpose also. So this is the map where you could see where this type of, degradation is being found. Okay, next you have the Eklavya model residential schools. So here the Ministry of Tribal Affairs and the Microsoft, the MOU has been signed between the Ministry of Tribal Affairs and the Microsoft for the purpose of the digital transformation of these tribal schools, which are also known as the Eklavya model residential schools as well as the ashram schools, to give them the digital transformation to those schools, right? So under this affirmative action, from specifically from the Microsoft, which is basically the world, topmost software company, will make the artificial intelligence curriculum, right, that will be available to the tribal students both in English and the Hindi, right? These artificial intelligence based curriculum that will be available, right, to all Eklavya model residential schools which are functioning under the Ministry of Skill, right? And both educators and the students, the next generation technologies that will be imparted, right, all, necessary skills in the artificial intelligence to provide them some sort of a digital transformation of the tribal schools. Okay, and that the Eklavya model residential schools are currently functioning under the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, right? So under this program, it is the first phase where the 250 schools belong to the Eklavya model residential schools have been chosen, have been adopted by the Microsoft. Out of 50 such Eklavya model residential schools, and that will be provided some sort of a intensive training, right, to the master trainers, and that would be trained in the first phase to impart this artificial intelligence based curriculum, right, so as to impart this education to the students. Okay, now let us understand what is this Eklavya model residential schools. See, Eklavya model residential schools was started in 1997 1998, okay, to impart the quality education specifically to the ST or scheduled tribe children in the remote areas, right, in order to enable them to avail the opportunities in the high and the professional educations, right, in the courses, getting employment in the various sectors. So this Eklavya model residential schools are basically for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe students. So objective of this Eklavya model residential schools is to provide the quality middle and the high level education to the scheduled tribe students in the remote areas, and not only to enable them to avail the reservation in the high end professional courses, right, as well as to enable them to achieve the jobs in the government and the public sectors as well as in the private sectors. And regarding these ashram schools are basically residential schools in which you have the free boarding, free lodging, okay, along with other facilities, right, other incentives that will be provided to the students. So apart from the formal education, these ashram schools are emphasizing upon, some sort of physical activities, meditation, the play, sports, games, and other extracurricular activities also. So the ashram schools provide the education with residential facilities where you will have the conducive all around developmental opportunities. And this scheme is basically operational since 1991. All right. So here you could see the club model residential schools. The students are basically, you know, studying over there. Okay. Next you have the Samvedana. What is Samvedana? See, Samvedana is basically, to provide some sort of the counseling or some sort of a psychological first aid or emotional support to the children which are affected due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So now this COVID-19 pandemic has brought the psychological stress, the emotional stress in the mind of the children, right, to alleviate them to move out from this psychological stress and the emotional stress. Okay, the National Commission for the Protection of the Child Rights is providing the tele-counseling, right, tele-counseling to the children through the Samvedana. That is being providing the platform for this psychological first aid and emotional support to the children through the tele-counseling. So Samvedana basically stand for the sensitizing action on the mental health vulnerability through emotional development and necessary acceptance. So here you would have the tele counseling. That means you will have to dial a number. That is, you will have the toll-free helpline which is launched to provide the psychological, social, mental support to the children which are affected because of COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, and this service is available on the toll-free number, that is 1800 121 2830, and you can dial this number from Monday to Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. and then from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. after a gap of 2 hours, right, in that period. So roughly from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. you can dial this number, right, from Monday to Saturday for this psychological first aid and emotional support to the children. Okay, and this daily counseling will be provided to the children under three categories. The first category of the children who are in the quarantine or who are in the isolation or who are in the COVID care centers with the government of India or government of states. Okay, the second category of the children, the second category of the children who are tested positive for the novel coronavirus, right, and whose parents or family members, right, have also been tested positive for that purpose, right. And the third category of the children who have lost their parents due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So all three categories of the people having some sort of a severity of stress. Here the third category where the children are losing their parents due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The second category where the children's their parents, their family members are also positive for the COVID infections, and the first category where children are kept in the isolation of the quarantine wards. Okay, next you have the magnetometer. See, magnetometer is basically a device. Okay, so that is basically measured some sort of a magnetic field or the magnetic dipole moment. You might have studied in your class 12th physics in 11th also. Okay, so magnetometer is basically a device that measuring the magnetic field and magnetic dipole moment specifically. So the magnetometers basically measure the direction, also strength and the relative change in the magnetic field at a particular location. So the scientists from the Raman Research Institute, okay, which is located in the Bangalore, right, basically have developed the magnetometer, right, for the purpose of the measuring of these magnetic fields. That is basically at the low cost and reliable in a real time measurement for the purpose of the quantifying these magnetic fields. So the Raman's Research Institute, which is located in Bangalore, is basically an autonomous institute to the Department of Science and Technology. So if you see that Raman Research Institute is an institute of the scientific research located in the Bangalore. It was founded by the Nobel laureate C.V. Raman. You might have heard the name C.V. Raman. So it was founded by the such great legendary physicist, right? Dr. C.V. Raman, who was also the Nobel laureate. Okay, and this institute even itself privately owned by Sir C.V. Raman, but now this institute is under autonomous institute of the Department of Science and Technology, and now it is founded, or sorry, now it is funded by the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India also. So about magnetometer, I have told you that magnetometer is a device that measures the magnetic field or magnetic dipole moment. Okay, so the magnetometers basically measure the direction, the strength, relative changes in the magnetic field at a particular locations. Okay, so you could easily measure the direction of the ambient magnetic field, right? And that in the case of you could also assess the earth magnetic field, the changes in that magnetic field also, right? Next you have the elder line. What is elder line? It is again a toll free helpline for the elderly persons, right? So this toll free helpline for the elderly persons, right, that is 14567, right, that is operational in the various states. Now these toll free helpline which is available to the elderly people, it is because of the COVID pandemic. Now these elderly people are facing the severe stress due to due to such COVID-19 pandemic, right? They are having the psychological stress, mental stress, right? So for that, the helpline have been launched by the government of India. So in order to address those problems which are facing by the elders, right, the Ministry of Social Justice, Government of India has started the state-wise call centers, right, that is under the elder line projects, and these facilities made operation already in the five major states, that is Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. The Telangana, this facility has been already operation for more than 1 year for providing this psychological aid, mental aid, emotional support to those elderly people. Okay, so here the call centers can be reached out by the toll number. If you just dial this number 14567, you could easily connect with the call centers, and the elders specifically can use this facility to get counselings in that process, right? And this elder line is basically operationalized with the assistance of Tata Trust and NSC Foundations. So what is this Tata Trust? Tata Trust is basically the India's oldest and non-sectarian philanthropic organizations, and the trust own two-thirds of the stock holding of the Tata Sons Limited. That is the apex company of the Tata group of companies. Okay, and that is basically one of the the non-sectarian philanthropic organization here. Okay, next you have the telecom security. Now for the purpose of providing the telecom security, right, on the occasion of the World Telecommunication and Information Society Day, the telecom secretary Mr. Anshul Prakash have inaugurated the online course. This online course will be provided to train and to certify these officers in the network security, right? So these online courses would be basically providing these facilities regarding the training and the coursework related to those officers which are working with the network security. So what is this network security? See, network security is basically the security which protect your network and your data from breaches, from intrusions and from other threats. For example, the network security involve the access control, the virus and antivirus softwares, right, the applications of the security, the network analytics, the types of the network related security, right, that is firewalls, VPN encryptions and many more, right? So this course which is being provided to train and certify officers in the network security. This course is organized by the National Telecommunications Institute for the Policy Research, Innovation and Training, that is NTIPRIT. That is basically the premier training institute with the Department of Telecommunication, Government of India. Okay. Now, what is this? The World Telecommunication Information Society, sorry, Information Society Day. So, World Telecommunication Information Society Day is basically an international day that has been proclaimed in November 2006 by International Telecommunications Union conference that was held in Antalya in Turkey, right? And it was decided during the conference by this ITU, that is International Telecommunication Union at Turkey, that the May 17th every year it will be celebrated as, the World Telecommunication Information Society Day. And what is this International Telecommunication Union? It is basically a specialized agency of the United Nations which is responsible for the matters related to the information communication technologies, right? It was set up, long back in 1865 as the International Telegraph Union, and that has been renamed as the International Telecommunication Union, and now it is being headquarters at Geneva, Switzerland. Okay, so here the 36-hour coursework is to be provided to train and certify these officers or network security officers, specifically in the network security, and this is the first of its kind for that purpose, right? And this course is basically presently for the Department of Telecommunication officers, right? In order to expose them, in order to provide, their expanded knowledge to cover various other officers with the government, as well as gradually to the private sectors also. So here the sound telecom network security is basically needed, right? And for that purpose, a collaborative effort is also needed of the telecom service providers, various original equipment manufacturers, and the Department of Telecommunication officers, because in order to have the overall coordination, then only we can have this network security put in the place. All right. So that's all for today. Thank you very much. Be safe. Be at your home. Take care of yourself. Thank you very much, and we'll meet again tomorrow for our next current affairs. Thank you.